Good morning, fifth grade. This is Miss J, and today is Wednesday, April 8th, and we're going to jump right into today's math lesson. So, before we begin, just a quick overview of the outline of today's math lesson. You're going to jump into the PST independently. Then we're going to have a discussion where you're going to engage while checking your PST. Then we're going to take notes. You can write it down on a piece of scratch paper or you can type it in a separate document. Then we're going to jump into the practice problems, which you are going to do independently, then continue to watch the video to check your work. Lastly, you're going to jump into the exit ticket after you've completed all the practice problems above in Google Classrooms. For today's PST, you're going to classify each triangle as acute, obtuse, or right and explain your reasoning. Now, yesterday you spoke about rhombus and rectangles. Today, we're going to learn about triangles. Now, from fourth grade, you should know that you can classify triangles based on angle types. So we have our angle types acute, obtuse, and right. And we know that an acute angle is less than 90 degrees. An obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees, but less than 180 degrees. And a right angle is 90 degrees. So with that knowledge, you're going to label each type of triangle and then you're going to explain why. So right now, pause the video and jump into your PST. Okay, welcome back. We're going to have our discussion and discuss our PST. And if you haven't noticed already, our PST is in two parts, so this is part one. So for our first triangle, we notice that there is a square inside of the triangle. We always know by looking at that square that it is a 90-degree angle. So whenever there's a square in an angle, we know that it's 90 degrees and that it is a right angle. So this square is a right angle and we know this. This is a right triangle because it has two acute angles and one right angle, meaning that it has two angles that are smaller than 90 degrees, and then it has one angle that is 90 degrees. For our second triangle, it is an acute triangle. Why? Because each angle is less than 90 degrees. So this is an acute triangle because it has all acute angles. Lastly, we have an obtuse triangle. We have our angle that is greater than 90 degrees, and then it has two acute angles that are less than 90 degrees. So this is an obtuse triangle because it has one obtuse angle and two acute angles. So notice that each triangle has at least two acute angles. So triangles can be categorized by the third angle. Now you should also have your shape hierarchy Google Doc opened. If you don't have that open, take a moment to open that up. Awesome. So now looking at our three triangles, are all triangles polygons? Now if you look at your shape hierarchy, you could see that yes, they are because triangle is a subcategory of polygons. Now, are all polygons triangles? No, because there are many different subcategories underneath polygons. Now, let's take some notes. So far, we've learned that all triangles have two acute angles, and they are named based on their third angle. An acute triangle, a triangle containing three acute angles. A right triangle is a triangle containing two acute angles and one right angle. An obtuse triangle is a triangle containing two acute angles and one obtuse angle. Take a moment to write those notes down. Awesome. Now that you've taken down your notes, let's jump into our second problem-solving task. For your second problem-solving task, there's a rule about the angles in a triangle. Use the table below to try and determine the rule. You also need to fill in the type of triangle for each triangle listed in the table. Then you're going to describe the rule that you discovered, and then you're going to apply the rule to find the measure of the missing angle. So pause the video and do that now. Welcome back. So for our second part of our PST, we were to fill in each type of triangle. Now we would do that by looking at our measure of our angles. We have 60 degrees for triangle A of our first angle, angle 2 60 degrees, angle 3 60 degrees. They are all below 90 degrees. So these are three acute angles. So we know that triangle A is an acute triangle. Triangle B, it has two angles that are acute angles, and then it has one angle that is 90 degrees. So that lets us know that it is a right triangle. Triangle C, it has two angles that are acute angles, and then it has one angle that is 120 degrees. Now remember we said earlier that every triangle has two acute angles, and then we can figure out the kind of triangle or the type of triangle that it is by the third angle. Now I want you to describe the rule you discovered. You should have discovered you should have discovered that the sum of the angles in any triangle is 180 degrees. So if we add up every angle in every triangle, it's 180 degrees. 60 times 3 is 180. 45 plus 45 is 90. Plus 90 is 180. 60 plus 120 is 180 degrees. Now that we know the rule, we're going to apply that rule to find the measure of this missing angle. So in order to find the measure of the missing angle, we're going to have to do some work. Now it's not asking you what kind of triangle it is. It's asking you to find this measurement. It's really important that we don't try to do this math in our head in order to make sure that we are doing our best work and we're not making silly mistakes. We have to show our work. So here, we're going to add up our two angles. Once we add up 82 plus 55, we get 137. What's our next step? That's right, we're going to subtract 137 from 180. So 180 subtracted by 137 is 43. So our missing angle is 43 degrees. So now let's add what we just learned into our notes. The sum of angles inside of a triangle is always 180 degrees. Another way of putting this, when you add up the three angles in a triangle, you will always get a sum of 180 degrees. Take a moment to write that down. Once you've completed your notes, you're going to jump into the practice problems independently. So you can pause the video here. Once you've completed the practice problems, come back and we'll go over it together. Part 1 of our practice problems, you are to define the triangles below by their angles based on your 4th grade geometry knowledge. Think acute, obtuse, and right. So for part 1 of our practice problems, you're going to define the triangles below by their angles. Based on your 4th grade geometry knowledge, think acute, obtuse, and right. So here we can see that we have a right angle in our first triangle and a right angle in our second. I did as best as I could to draw that in. Now, a way that you can tell that if it's a right angle or not is if you were to get an edge of a piece of paper and put it right in that corner. Now, if it is to fit perfectly, then that lets you know right away that it is a right angle. A triangle like this may sometimes be hard to tell. Now, this ain't triangle, it's a lot more obvious that we have a right angle there. So we know that we have two acute angles and one right angle, which means that it is a right triangle. Our second category is acute. We know this because all three angles in both triangles are less than 90 degrees. So if we have three triangles that are less than 90 degrees and they are all acute, then it is an acute triangle. Lastly, obtuse. That's clear because we have one angle that is much larger than 90 degrees, and then we have two angles that are smaller. So that lets us know that it is an obtuse angle. That is the same for the second triangle also. Now it says, see if you can fill in your notes for today using your knowledge from last year. So you can include this in your notes. What an acute triangle is. Again, I'm going to say it, and you should make sure that you have it written down. A defining attribute of an acute triangle is that it is a triangle containing three acute angles. An example of that is a triangle that looks like this. A right triangle is a triangle containing two acute angles and one right angle. An example of that would look like this. Again, make sure this is written in your notes. Lastly, an obtuse triangle is a triangle containing two acute angles and one obtuse angle. A triangle that looks like that. Make sure that you have these examples written in your notes. And the secret code. So right now I'm going to reveal the secret code. The secret code is Renegade. Lowercase letters Renegade. Again, the secret code for your math lesson exit ticket is Renegade. Renegade. Moving on to the rest of our practice. Classify each triangle below as a right, acute, or obtuse triangle. So we had some triangles missing, so I drew them in as best as I possibly could, so bear with me. Our first triangle, we notice that we have a right angle. One way to tell if there isn't a square there is if we put an edge of a piece of paper in between there. Will it fit perfectly? The answer is yes. So that tells us that we have a right angle here. And our other two angles are acute. Why is it a right angle? Use the defining attribute to prove your answer below. Now, a defining attribute is the characteristic that defines that triangle, right? That's different from an attribute, which is any characteristic of a category. That could be color, shape, or size. Now, the defining attribute is what makes that specific triangle called that triangle. Now, again, like we said, now you should have it written in the lines below or on your scratch paper. This is a right triangle because it has two acute angles and one right angle. Make sure you have that written down. Now, for our next triangle, we know that this triangle is an acute triangle. It has three angles that are smaller than 90 degrees. So that lets us know that it is an acute angle. All angles are acute, so it makes it an acute angle. Make sure that you have this written as a defining attribute below. Our next triangle, we see that it has two acute angles, which is true for every single triangle, and it has one angle that is larger than 90 degrees. That lets us know that it is an obtuse angle, right? Because it has one obtuse angle and two acute angles. That should be written down below. Now we're going to move into the end of our practice problems. True or false? All angles in a triangle must equal 180 degrees. Now thinking about what we learned earlier, each angle would add up to 180 degrees. So that is true. I also asked this question earlier. All triangles are polygons. Are they? Yes, they are. Because triangle is a subcategory of polygons. Some triangles have two obtuse angles. We know that that is false because every triangle has at least two acute angles and a triangle only has three angles. So it's not possible for a triangle to have two obtuse angles. Lastly, all triangles have at least two acute angles. That is true. All triangles do have at least two acute angles. So from here, you're going to head over to Google Classrooms to complete your math exit ticket. Remember, if you have any questions, please reach out to your teachers and making sure that you are advocating for yourself. If you need any clarification or anything, make sure you're asking questions and specific questions. And also remember that in order to move on to your exit ticket questions, you must know the secret code. Hope you guys have a wonderful day.